Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's July webinar. So the topic for today is going to be around stock management in LaserPro. So this is a fairly sought after topic among members in Australia. So hopefully that you can learn something today and apply this to your business over in New Zealand as well. So to start with, before I screen share and jump into LaserPro, I just want to talk about the stock methodology that LaserPro follows. So they follow a first in, first out, or FIFO stock methodology. So this is really important to understand because if you do have, say, historical data in the system from a stock take that you've entered, 2 years ago or longer, and it hasn't been updated since, and you're now allocating that stock onto a job, we just really need to understand that those costs are then going to be outdated. They're not current costs because it's captured the costs at the time of the stock take. So if your last stock take, if you look at your LaserPro, and it was a significant time ago, and then you are using that on jobs, the likelihood of that being accurate for your job P&L is pretty slim. So really important to understand that first in, first out methodology up front before we then go through the later steps. So from here, I will share my screen and we'll jump into LaserPro. Just wait for that to load. Perfect. I think you can see that now. So when we come into LaserPro, I'm on my main dashboard at the moment. And if I hover over the cube icon in the blue navigational menu, we've got our catalogs and our pre-builds access here, but we also have a bit further down stock and stock take tabs. Now, I'm going to click into stock first. And this is where what's called our storage devices live. Just wait for that to load. It's taking a bit longer than I'd hoped. There we go. So we can see all our storage devices or storage locations, I guess we could call them as well. This is just SimPro's terminology for them. So generally, this is going to be set up along the lines of a warehouse, a shed, technician vans or utes or the vehicles, I guess where the physical stock is going to sit. So we can see here there's quite a few vans set up, and further down there is a warehouse as well. Now, the warehouse at the moment is the default storage device, and that is important. We can only have one default, and so generally I would pick the warehouse or the shed or that main physical location as the default. We have a hand up from Linda. Linda, do you have a question? I'm not sure if you're trying to talk because you're on mute, and I also can't see you, so I'm not sure whether you have a question or not. Feel free to pop the question in the chat box if you aren't able to unmute yourself. So if we come back into LaserPro, if I scroll back up, storage device setup is important. So whether you want to get to that level of having all of your vehicles set up, that is completely up to you. Some members choose to go to that level and some don't. Some might just have a warehouse and they just manage the warehouse really well. So it's up to you whether you want to go to that next level, because it is quite a commitment to do the stock takes, but then also implement that process moving forward to make sure that it is maintained. Because there's not much point spending all this time and effort doing the stock takes, entering the data in the system, and if we're not maintaining it, the stock counts are going to be out probably within a couple of days. So it is a bit of a longer term commitment. I find that we need to consider the longer term process and get the entire team on board. Can anyone else see the screen? Linda's saying she can't see the screen. Can anyone else not see it? Anyone else having issues? Okay, Josh can see it fine. I think it might just be something on your end, Linda. Do you want to try leaving the call and then rejoining and see if that fixes that issue for you? Thanks, Miriam. Thanks, Josh. I just wanted to double check that I wasn't off on a tangent and no one could follow along. So thanks for clarifying. All right. Where was I? We need to get everyone on board with the process. So there's not much point saying let's do a stock take. You put it in the system, and then we don't have the technicians on board if we're going to that vehicle level, because if they're not following the process, then that's when it's going to get out of sorts very quickly. So we do need to maybe have a toolbox talk, and let's get the whole team around it, and let's get everyone on board and pick a date for the change. So it is a bit of a team effort, stock management, I find. As much as yes, they do one driver of it, and friendly reminders to do this, but it really is a team effort on an ongoing basis. So if I scroll back up, the other thing that I will note with stock management is it is somewhat reliant on your catalog being accurate and tidy. So if your catalog is out of sorts and it has thousands of duplicates or just things you need, I probably would recommend maybe trying to tidy that up first and address the catalog issues before you go down the stock management route. Because if we're stock taking in, again, incorrect catalog items or incorrect prices at the time of the stock take, that's going to flow through when you then use that on jobs due to that first in, first out methodology that I mentioned at the beginning. So it is a bit of a process, I find. Catalog issues first, then we can address stock. But if I come back to my storage devices now, if I come back to my cube icon in the blue navigational menu and come down to stock takes, this is the second tab that we've got. And this is going to show us all of the history if we have done stock takes or stock adjustments before in LaserPro. And I'll just briefly explain the difference between the two. So when we go to create a stock take, you first of all have to select which storage device you want to do this for. So each time you do a stock take or stock adjustment, it is per storage device. So that's why your storage device setup is quite important if you do want to get to that van level. But for now, let's just Adam's van because it's at the top and hit create. So by default, it's put my type at the top here as stock adjustment. And so it's given me all of the items that are currently in the storage device, their system stock counts, and then what our counted stock would be if we were doing another count. So if we wanted to say that this one was now 30, and then it will pick up the variation for me. Now, that can be helpful, but if you're doing this in the first instance, you're not managing stock at the moment, we just want to get some accurate data in the system. I wouldn't recommend using the stock adjustment to get it up to date. What I would probably do instead is change the type to stock take. And what that's going to do is it's going to give me a pop-up saying, are you sure you want to do this? Because once it does this, it's going to remove all of the items that are in the storage device at the moment. It's essentially going to wipe it to give you a blank slate to start with. And you would just enter the items and the counts that's currently physically in that storage location. So if I hit change type, all of those items are now gone, and I would now have to go into my catalog tab and search for the items that we've counted and then enter the quantities against them. So if I go to here and I'm just going to add an item, it has no price, so that's not a great example. Let me come back to favorites maybe. We don't have favorites in this system. I'm off to a good start. All right, something that has a price, I'll take it. So if I come back now, we've got our two parts and we've got that the counted stock is 1 because that's the quantity that I entered. Now we can adjust these here if we want to. And this one is 20. Once I hit save, depending on your security group settings, you may be able to create a stock take or stock adjustment, but maybe you won't be able to approve it. And that's all dependent on your security permissions. If you have access to kind of everything, then you shouldn't have an issue. But at the moment, it's kind of in a draft form. So I've submitted it, but until I hit finish and approve, it's not actually going to flow through to the storage device, and it's not going to flow through to any stock counts, stock figures, etc. So we do need to kind of do this final check. And then once we hit this finish and approve button, it's now going to carry across, and it will also be, so if I just hit save and finish for a second and we come back to our stock takes screen, this top one here, it says approved no. And so very visually you can see by coming to this page whether there's any that are in draft mode that haven't been approved. So if you come in and see that there's a no, you can look at who created it, and then you can go have a chat to them if it is another staff member, and then have a chat about why hasn't it been approved and pushed through. So at the moment, because it's not approved, it does have a $0 value. So if I come back into it now and hit finish and approve and come back, it's now changed my approved stage to yes, and it's also got the value against it as well. So really important, like I said, the cost of the catalog item at the point in time of you doing the stock take. So I've just entered that now. It's got a value of $412.79. But if there was, say, a cost increase for that item, well, that's not going to flow through to the stock because it takes the cost at the point in time. So if there was a price increase in a month's time, that's not going to flow through to my stock. I will probably mention that a lot today, but a lot of people struggle to understand it. So I will mention it often. I'll drill it in. So now that we've got a stock take in the system, between stock takes, if you did just want to adjust minor variances or stock levels, that's when we would then use the stock adjustment type here. So if I wanted to come in and say, actually, no, I counted this wrong, it was supposed to be 18, we can do that as well. So now that we've got a stock take and a stock adjustment in the system, if I come back to my materials icon and come into stock, we've got all of our different storage devices here. And if I click into that Adams van one again, that's our example of the day, we can see all of the items, what's been assigned to jobs, what's currently in stock, and anything that's potentially a stock purchase order has been raised but not receipted yet. So it's on order assigned, something like that. That may come up in some of these other columns. It may not say that it's in stock because maybe it's the receipt hasn't been receipted yet for the purchase order. So sometimes members in Australia especially get a bit confused and they say, well, why is it showing up here? I don't have it in stock. It's just due to some outstanding purchase orders generally. But if I come to the very bottom of the screen, we've got a few different options here. We've got transfer to storage device, allocate to job, and print barcodes. So if we wanted to transfer stock between storage devices, we can at a desktop level. So from the mobile app, the technicians can't actually transfer stock between, say, the warehouse and their storage device for the van, and they can't do van-to-van storage transfers either. So it has to be done on a desktop. So I'll show you a couple of ways you can do that and some potential workarounds for the technicians as well. But we can come in here, select which items we want to transfer. Where is one that's in stock? Okay, we'll select this one. We can go transfer to storage device, select which device we want to transfer it to. So whether it's another van, and hit transfer. And then it will take us into a stock transfer screen, and we can specify what quantity we want to transfer between them. So if I want to say 5 and hit transfer, and now that's pushed that across. So if the technicians are taking stock out of each other's vehicles because maybe they've run out, it's really important that we keep the system up to date. The data in the system is only as good as what we put in. So if they're exchanging parts, then they need to let someone know so that way the system's updated as well. So if I come back into Adam's van, and we'll come back to the bottom, the second one is allocate to job. So you can allocate stock to a job within the job itself if you have the job open. So that's one way you could do it. But if you are in the storage device itself, you can do it this way as well. So if I come back to my in stock, allocate to job, and then you can select the job number that you want to assign it to. So very similar screen to the previous one we were looking at for the transfer. We can select our quantity, but obviously we do need to know the job number to then specify where it's going to transfer to. I'm just going to cancel out of that for a moment. And the third option is print barcodes. So if I went select all and print barcodes, what the system can do is generate barcodes for me on in a PDF. So that way, if you wanted to print these out and maybe put them on a shelf or in the warehouse or something like that, so that way, if a technician is taking items from the warehouse, they can walk up and scan it with a barcode scanner. It will then specify by them scanning it exactly what part they've just taken. So it can generate the barcode, and at the moment it's got one per page, and that layout is not probably very helpful. You can adjust the barcode PDF format or layout as to how many barcodes fit on the page in your system setup, in the form setup. There's a barcode specific form tab there. So if you do want to play around with that, because maybe you want to print them onto labels or something to that effect, you can tweak that if you want to. But it will at least generate the barcode with the part name at the top. So if you did want to print those out and put them on a shelf for when they're doing stock takes to make it a bit easier, you can absolutely do that. So in relation to the barcodes, there is another way that you can do stock takes and stock transfers. And not many people know about this. It's probably not very commonly used. But if you take your LaserPro URL, so at the moment, this is the demo one. So whatever your funny code says, .lasergroup.simprocloud.com/staff, if you copy that in your browser, now I've already opened it earlier, but I'll do it again for the sake of the example. If you enter that URL into a new tab, and instead of the /staff, if we type /barcode, just the word barcode, that's all we need to change. The rest of the URL stays exactly the same. It actually takes us into what I call the barcode portal. So it is a browser-based portal. It is fairly basic, but this could give the technicians ability to do stock transfers via a mobile if they were using it in, say, Safari or Chrome or something like that. So because it can't be done within the mobile app itself, this is my workaround and next best way to do that. So if I come in here, we've got two options, stock take or stock transfer. So we can't do stock adjustments in here. If you wanted to do a stock adjustment, you're going to have to do it back in the desktop version of LaserPro. But if we did want to enter a stock take or transfer, we can click on the relevant option and select which storage device we want to transfer from and to. So if we go with our Adam and Collins van example from earlier, and for the only downside to this is they need to know what part that they're looking for. So I don't know what part I'm looking for because I didn't note what that was. Just going to copy that part number to make it easier for myself. So I've just entered the part number, or you can select the description as well if you know what the part name is or roughly. And once I hit enter, I've now selected the part, and it says that there's 18 in Adam's van, there's 0 in Collins, and I guess how many do I want to transfer? So if I want to say 6, it can give us a summary as well if we want to. So it says transfer amount 6 based on me entering the 6 against Collins van. And then we can choose whether we want to complete the transfer or not. So if I now hit transfer, it's completed that and it's pushed that stock across. So it can be helpful from maybe the technician point of view, or if you don't want the technicians to use it on, say, their phones, but maybe more so in a warehouse capacity if they're coming in, first thing in the morning to pick some items up. some members in Australia have opted to put an iPad or a tablet or something to that effect, or if there's a spare laptop hanging around in the warehouse, so that way they can enter that as they're taking those items on their way out. So that way we are getting that accurate data coming back into the system in terms of the stock levels. So not very commonly known, but unfortunately they do need to kind of know what roughly part name or part number is to specify what they need to stock take or stock transfer in this portal. Any questions about the barcode portal before I move on? Perfect. We will keep moving. So if I come back to my desktop LaserPro, and I'm going to stick with the storage device screen that we're in. So if I come back here, if we go to options on the right hand side against the storage device, we've got a few different options here. So we can view the stock, we can edit the storage device name. Wouldn't recommend deleting it. But what we want to look at down here is we've got 3 different options: stock levels, transfer stock, or stock take. So if you did want to create a stock take or transfer, you can do so here from these 2 tabs, as well as what was down the bottom of the screen. But the one that I want to click into is this stock levels. So if I now click into this, pardon me, what this is going to do is give me the minimum level and restock level options for this storage device. So this can be really helpful, especially if it's if you are going to that van level. If they need to have a minimum amount of stock on hand at any one time, just due to the nature of the work, especially if it's service and maintenance type work, maybe less prevalent if you're doing more so projects. But if they need to carry, 20 of a certain item, if they need to carry 20 GPOs at any time, then we can come in here and say the minimum level should be 15. And when the stock count gets to 15, then we want an alert to appear and prompt either a stock purchase order or a stock transfer to happen to top it back up to the level that it needs to be at. So if I want to say that the restock level is 30, whatever that would be, if I hit save. So you do need to do this per storage device, however. So if you do have all the vans set up, you will need to enter these against each one. Unfortunately, it isn't just the same part across the board. So you may have some level of duplication there if you're trying to set up the same items in all of the vans. But this is really helpful because if I hit save and finish now, when that stock level drops too low, so when it gets to that 15 or below, what it's going to do is it's going to send us a system alert to say that Adam's storage device is now getting low for this item, and it's going to prompt us to either do a transfer or do a stock purchase order to top it back up. So if I now click on this, that is not what I wanted to click on. So it gives us the alert here, but if I come back into Adam's van storage device, we've got this restock button at the top here. So if we've entered all of those minimum and restock levels accurately, and the stock levels have been entered in terms of the stock takes, then if I come in here, I can just hit the restock, and whether I want to generate those items from a purchase order or from another storage device, I can choose that. And then any items that need topping up will then automatically assign to my PO for me. So you could have 20 items that need topping up, and without you having to sit there and manually calculate the quantities for each and then add them to a PO, by us entering those levels, the system's going to kind of do those calculations for us and track the levels. So then all you need to do is kind of hit restock on a regular basis. If you see that those alerts are starting to come up, hit restock, the purchase order is generated, it's going to get a top up, and then the system alert will drop off once it's got back to its restock level. So quite handy.
Just on those restocks, if it's from more than one supplier, can you split the PO that's being done up? Because sometimes it can be from multiple suppliers for different parts.
So let me go back into my unlock. So when you get to the purchase order screen, if the catalog part was related to multiple suppliers, then a drop down would appear between this part name and part quantity for you to select which supplier you want to order it from. So this specific part only has one supplier, so I don't have the option, but let me see if I can find another one. We'll try warehouse. I don't know if any of them have been set up in here. They have not. Okay, not the greatest example, but if the supplier was linked, multiple suppliers were linked to the catalog item, the drop down would appear and you can then kind of go through and tick and flick which item you want from which supplier. And then when you hit finish, if there was more than one supplier listed, it would generate 2 purchase orders instead of the 1.
So that's when you put, sorry, when you enter the stock item originally, then you have to make sure you enter in that what supplier it's from and all the rest of it. So it's not just a matter of that item.
If you're entering a stock take, it doesn't ask you that information. If you're doing a stock purchase order and putting it into stock that way, then obviously it's going to record which supplier that you've purchased it from at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Is there any other questions? All right, well, if there's no other questions, I'll just do a quick recap. So LaserPro follows that first in, first out stock methodology. So making sure that the stock is up to date regularly, either via stock takes or stock adjustments, is really important. Outdated data isn't going to help us. Getting the whole team on board to commit to stock management if that's something that you want to roll out for your team. Recommend having a toolbox talk, especially if you want buy-in from the technicians, because once we've entered that data, even if it's just to then allocate the stock from the storage device, their storage device, onto a job, you know, we need their input and buy-in to do that, to make sure that that's flowing through and then that the job costs are then allocated. So really important, the data that we get out is only as good as the data that we put in. So while, yes, we've just done lots of different things today, there is also a stock specific reporting area if you do want to have a look at. So if we come into reports, view reports, and then into the stock tab, there is a handful of stock related reports as well. If this is something that you've implemented and now you want to, you know, report on what stock transfers have taken place. What's the stock value sitting at the moment? Things like that. So there are a couple of handy reports that can tie into some of the things that we just looked at. So try and utilize those where you can as well. That's it for today's stock management content. If you do have any questions after the fact, please reach out to your BPM. They have my contact information if anything needs to be escalated.